The Night Shift, a 3-hour collection of true horror stories. Introduction. Before we begin tonight, I want you to get comfortable. Turn off the lights if you can. Let the darkness settle around you. What you're about to hear are accounts that people have shared with me over the years. Stories they've carried in silence. Some of these events have explanations. Others do not. I've changed names and certain details to protect privacy, but the core of each experience remains exactly as it was told to me. These aren't fictional tales designed to frighten you. They're memories that have haunted real people. Moments that changed how they see the world. Over the next few hours we'll explore 6 encounters with the unexplainable. Each one different. Each one unsettling in its own way. Some of you listening right now might recognize elements of your own experiences in these stories. If that happens, I want you to know you're not alone. The first story takes place in a small town in Oregon. A place where everyone knows everyone. Where nothing bad is supposed to happen. But as you'll hear, sometimes the most ordinary places hide the darkest secrets. So settle in. Take a deep breath. And remember that what you're about to hear actually happened to someone. Somewhere. And it could happen to you. Let's begin. Story 1. The House on Meridian Street. Have you ever walked past a house and felt it watching you back? My name is Sarah and I'm 32 years old now, but this story takes place when I was 19. I had just started community college and needed a job to help with tuition. My mom showed me a posting at the grocery store. An elderly woman named Mrs. Catherine Marsh was looking for someone to help around her house 3 days a week. Light cleaning, meal preparation, companionship mostly. The pay was generous. Almost too generous for what seemed like simple work. But I needed the money, and honestly the idea of spending time with a sweet old lady seemed peaceful compared to working retail. Mrs. Marsh lived on Meridian Street in the old part of town. You know the area I'm talking about if you've ever lived in a small Oregon town. Those neighborhoods where the houses were built in the early 1900s. Big craftsman-style homes with wide porches and stained glass windows. Beautiful during the day. Something else entirely at night. Her house was a pale yellow Victorian with white trim. 3 stories tall with a turret on the left side. The lawn was overgrown. Flower beds choked with weeds. The whole property had this air of elegant decay. Like a grand old woman who'd stopped looking in mirrors. I remember walking up those porch steps for the first time. The wood creaked under my feet. Not a normal creak. A groan. Like the house resented my presence. I should have listened to that sound. Should have turned around right then, but I didn't. Mrs. Marsh answered the door before I could knock. She was tiny, maybe 4'10", thin as paper, but her eyes were sharp, bright blue and completely alert. She smiled at me and it was warm, genuine. That smile made me relax. She's just a lonely old woman, I told myself. This will be easy money. The inside of the house was dark despite it being 2 in the afternoon. Heavy curtains covered every window. The air smelled like old books and lavender and something else. Something I couldn't quite identify. Something organic and slightly sweet. Like flowers left too long in a vase. Mrs. Marsh gave me a tour of the first floor. The kitchen where I'd prepare her meals. The living room where she spent most of her time. A small bathroom. Everything seemed normal. Dated but normal. Floral wallpaper. Antique furniture. Photographs in ornate frames covering every surface. I noticed all the photographs were old. Black and white or faded color. No recent pictures. When I asked about family, Mrs. Marsh's expression shifted. Just for a moment. Something cold passed across her face. I had a daughter, she said. Her voice was different when she said it. Flat. Past tense, I noted. Had. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't mean to pry. She smiled again and the warmth returned. You're not prying, dear. Now let me show you what I need help with. My duties were simple. I'd arrive at 2 p.m. 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'd vacuum and dust. Change her bed linens. Prepare dinner, which was always the same thing. Chicken breast. Steamed vegetables. White rice. She'd eat in the living room while watching old game shows. I'd clean the kitchen and leave by 6. For the first 2 weeks everything was fine. Mrs. Marsh was kind. A little strange, but most old people are. She'd tell me stories about growing up in the area, about her late husband who'd been a logger, about the garden she used to keep before her arthritis got bad. But she never mentioned her daughter again, and I never asked. The third week is when things started to feel wrong. I arrived on Monday as usual. Let myself in with the key Mrs. Marsh had given me. She was in the living room watching Wheel of Fortune. I called out a greeting and headed to the kitchen to start dinner. That's when I noticed the basement door was open. I'd never seen it open before. Didn't even realize the house had a basement until that moment. The door was tucked under the staircase. Easy to miss. But now it stood wide open and a draft of cold air drifted up from below. Mrs. Marsh, I called out. Did you need me to go down to the basement for something? No response. Just the sound of the television. I walked back to the living room. She was sitting in her usual chair, but she was asleep. Her head tilted to one side. Mouth slightly open. The remote had fallen from her hand onto the floor. I picked up the remote and turned down the volume. Decided to let her rest. Went back to the kitchen. The basement door was still open. I walked over and looked down. Wooden steps disappeared into darkness. I couldn't see a light switch. I should close this before she wakes up and tries to go down there, I thought. The last thing I needed was for my elderly employer to fall down basement stairs on my watch. I grabbed the doorknob and started to pull the door shut. That's when I heard it. Singing. A young voice. Female. Coming from somewhere deep in the basement. Singing a lullaby. Hush little baby, don't say a word. The voice was sweet. Pure. It echoed up the stairs and wrapped around me like cold fingers. I froze. Every instinct screaming at me to slam the door and leave. But I couldn't move. The singing continued. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Mrs. Marsh, I called out. Louder this time. Almost shouting. Is someone down there? The singing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the singing. It was heavy. Expectant. Like the house itself was holding its breath. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Coming up. Slow and deliberate. Step. 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 I slammed the door shut and backed away. My hands were shaking. The footsteps stopped. I stood there in the kitchen breathing hard, staring at that closed door, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I forced myself to move. Walked back to the living room. Mrs. Marsh was still asleep. I grabbed my purse. I didn't care about the money or being professional. I was leaving. But as I reached the front door, Mrs. Marsh spoke. Did you hear her? I turned around. She was awake now, sitting upright in her chair, looking directly at me. Her blue eyes were wet with tears, but she was smiling. My daughter, she said. She's been singing again. She hasn't sung in such a long time. Mrs. Marsh, I started. My voice cracked. There's no one down there. Maybe you were dreaming. And she shook her head. Rachel is down there. She's always down there. She won't come up anymore. Not since the accident. What accident? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. Mrs. Marsh's smile faded. She looked past me toward the kitchen, toward the basement door. Rachel was 17, she said. So beautiful. So talented. She was going to be a singer, you know. Everyone said so. But she was troubled. Heard voices. Saw things that weren't there. The doctors gave her pills, but they made her tired. Made her sleep all the time. So she stopped taking them. Mrs. Marsh paused. A tear rolled down her cheek. One night she went down to the basement. Said someone was calling her. I tried to stop her, but she was so strong when she was like that. I heard her scream. By the time I got down there, she was. Mrs. Marsh didn't finish. She didn't need to. I'm sorry, I said. I truly was. But I need to go, she nodded. I understand. Most people don't last long here. They hear her too. They all leave. But it's okay. Rachel has me. And I have her. We're together. That's all that matters. I left then. Walked out of that house and didn't look back. I called Mrs. Marsh that night and told her I couldn't continue. She thanked me for my time. Her voice was calm, almost cheerful. She said she'd mail me a check for the hours I'd worked. I never went back to Meridian Street. But sometimes late at night when everything is quiet, I still hear it. That sweet young voice singing, "Hush little baby, don't say a word." And I wonder if Mrs. Marsh is still sitting in that living room, listening to her daughter sing from the darkness below. Two ghosts haunting each other in a house that should have been torn down decades ago. The check arrived a week later. Full payment plus a generous bonus. I donated it to a mental health charity. I couldn't keep that money. It felt wrong somehow. Tainted. 3 months after I quit, I heard that Mrs. Marsh had passed away. Heart attack, the obituary said. They found her in the living room. The television still on. For some reason that detail haunted me more than anything else. The idea of her dying alone with only the sound of game shows and maybe her daughter's voice drifting up from below. The house sat empty for a year before the city condemned it. Too many code violations. Too much structural damage. They tore it down last spring. I drove by after the demolition. The lot was empty. Just dirt and weeds. But I swear I could still feel it. That presence. That weight. Some houses are more than wood and nails. They're repositories for pain. For loss. For love twisted into something dark and desperate. The house on Meridian Street is gone now, but I don't think what lived there ever truly left. It's just waiting. Patient. For someone else to hear the singing. I've never told anyone this story before. Not my family. Not my friends. They wouldn't understand. They'd say it was just an old woman with dementia. A lonely girl who'd taken her own life. That the singing was pipes or wind or my imagination. But I know what I heard, and I know what I felt in that house. Some doors shouldn't be opened. Some basements shouldn't exist. And some songs should never be sung. If you ever find yourself on a street like Meridian, in a town like mine, and you see a house that feels wrong, that watches you with dark windows like empty eyes, do yourself a favor. Keep walking. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't listen if you hear singing. Story 2. The Night Shift. 1 in every 4 people will work a night shift at some point in their lives, but what happens when the night shift works on you? This story was told to me by a man named Marcus. He was a security guard in his mid-40s. Divorced. No kids. He'd been working night shifts for almost 15 years when we met. He looked older than his age. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, we were sitting in a 24-hour diner at 3 in the morning. He was on his lunch break. I was researching stories like this one. He'd seen my ad in the paper asking people to share unexplained experiences. He said he had something I might want to hear. Something he'd never reported because no one would believe him. He bought me coffee and started talking. I work at the Riverside Industrial Complex, he said. You probably don't know it. Nobody does unless they work there. It's this sprawling warehouse facility out past the airport. Maybe 24 buildings spread across 50 acres. Most of them are storage. Some are light manufacturing. The place is maybe half occupied. The rest is just empty space. My job is simple. Drive around the property in a golf cart. Check doors. Make sure nobody's breaking in. File a report if anything looks wrong. 8-hour shift. Midnight to 8 a.m. 5 nights a week. I've been doing this run for 7 years now. Same route every night. Same buildings. Same empty parking lots. You'd think it would get boring. And it did for a while. But boring is good in security work. Boring means nothing's wrong. About 6 months ago that changed. It started with the footsteps. I was doing my rounds in Building 7. That's one of the empty ones. 3 stories. Used to be a textile factory back in the 80s. Now it's just bare concrete floors and broken windows. I have to check every floor. Make sure no squatters have moved in. Make sure no kids have broken into party or whatever kids do. I was on the 2nd floor. My flashlight cutting through the darkness. And I heard someone walking above me. Heavy footsteps. Work boots on concrete. Regular pace. Like someone walking with purpose. I called out. Security. The building is closed. I waited. The footsteps stopped. I went up to the 3rd floor. Nobody there. I checked every corner, every shadow. Nothing. Maybe it was the building settling, I told myself. Old buildings make noise, but I knew better. I'd been in that building hundreds of times. I knew the difference between settling and footsteps. 2 nights later it happened again. Same building. Same floor. This time I ran up the stairs. Got to the 3rd floor in maybe 30 seconds. The footsteps were still going when I started climbing. They stopped the second I reached the top. Nobody there. I started to dread building 7. Started saving it for last in my rounds. Hoping maybe if I waited long enough whatever was walking up there would leave. It didn't. The footsteps became regular. Every single night. Always when I was on the 2nd floor. Always stopping when I investigated. I thought about not checking the 3rd floor anymore. Just signing off that everything was fine. But that's not how you keep a job. So I kept going up. Kept finding nothing. Then one night I found the door. I was on the 3rd floor. Doing my usual sweep. My flashlight passed over the far wall and caught something I'd never noticed before. A door. Painted the same grey as the wall. No handle. No lock. Just a door-shaped outline in the concrete. I'd been in that building hundreds of times. How had I never seen this door? I walked over and pushed on it. It didn't budge. I ran my fingers along the edge looking for a way to open it. That's when I noticed the door was warm. Not hot, but noticeably warm. Like there was a heating unit running behind it. That didn't make sense. The building had no power. No heat. No utilities at all. It had been shut off years ago. I pressed my ear against the door. I could hear something. A low hum. Machinery maybe. And something else. Voices. Muffled. Like people talking in another room. I couldn't make out words, but there were definitely voices. Hello, I called out. I knocked on the door. Is someone in there? The voices stopped. The hum continued. I radioed dispatch. Told them I might have squatters in building 7. They said they'd send backup, but it would be 20 minutes. The nearest patrol car was across town. I should have waited. Should have gone back downstairs and waited for backup. But 20 minutes felt like too long. What if whoever was in there got away? What if they were destroying property or shooting up or whatever? I'm going in, I radioed. Negative, came the response. Wait for backup. But I was already looking for a way to open the door. I found a crowbar in my cart. Went back up. Wedged it into the gap between door and frame. Pried with all my strength. The door popped open. A wave of heat rolled out. And a smell. God, the smell. Like burning plastic and rust and something organic. Something rotten. I shined my flashlight inside. It was a hallway. Long. Maybe 50 feet. Concrete walls. Concrete floor. Fluorescent lights running along the ceiling. They were on. Bright and flickering. That was impossible. The building had no power. Marcus, I radioed. My voice shaking. You need to see this. What's wrong, came the response. I don't know, I said. There's a hallway here that shouldn't exist. Wait for backup, the dispatcher said again. Marcus, do not proceed alone. But I was already walking down the hallway. I don't know why. Something pulled me forward. Curiosity maybe. Or something else. Something I didn't understand then and still don't understand now. The hallway ended at another door. This one had a window. Small. Reinforced glass. Dirty. I looked through it. What I saw made no sense. It was an office. Desks. Computers. Filing cabinets. And people. At least a dozen people sitting at desks working. They were dressed in business clothes. Dress shirts. Ties. Skirts. Like it was the middle of a workday instead of 3 in the morning. But something was wrong with them. They weren't moving normally. Their movements were too stiff. Too precise. Like watching a video that's been slightly sped up. And their faces. I couldn't see them clearly through the dirty window, but what I could see looked wrong. Blurred. Like I was looking at them through water point. One of the figures stood up. Turned toward the door. Toward me. I ran. I don't remember much about getting out of that hallway. I know I dropped my flashlight. I know I fell once. Scraped my hands on the concrete. But I made it back through the door. Back to the 3rd floor of Building 7, I slammed the door shut. Leaned against it. My heart hammering in my chest. Behind me I could hear footsteps. Coming down the hallway. Getting closer. I pushed off the door and ran for the stairs. Took them 2 at a time. Got to the ground floor. Out to my cart. I drove straight to the security office and locked myself inside. Backup arrived 15 minutes later. 2 cops. I told them everything. They looked at me like I was on drugs. But they agreed to check Building 7 with me. We went up to the 3rd floor together. I showed them where the door had been. It wasn't there. Just a solid concrete wall. No outline. No seam. Nothing. The cops walked the entire floor. Checked everything. Found nothing unusual. They asked if I'd been drinking. If I was on any medication. I said no. They exchanged glances. One of them suggested I take the rest of the night off. Get some rest. I did. But I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those figures in that office. Kept hearing the footsteps in the hallway. I went back to work the next night. Told myself it had been stress. Lack of sleep catching up with me. That I'd imagined the whole thing. But I hadn't. Because when I got to Building 7 I found my flashlight lying on the floor of the 3rd story. Right where I'd dropped it when I ran. Marcus stopped talking. He stared into his coffee cup. His hands were shaking slightly. I still work there, he said finally. Still do my rounds. But I don't go into Building 7 anymore. I drive past it. Sign off that everything's fine. Nobody's noticed. Nobody cares. But sometimes when I'm driving past at night I see lights in the windows. Fluorescent lights. Flickering. And I know that hallway is still there. That office is still there. And those things, whatever they are still working. What do you think they were? I asked. What do you think you saw? Marcus looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. Exhausted. I don't know, he said. Ghosts maybe. Or something worse. Something that exists in a space between spaces. A place that shouldn't be there but is. A night shift that never ends. He stood up. Dropped a 10 on the table for his coffee. I have to get back, he said. My lunch break is over. He walked out of the diner into the darkness. I watched him get into his car and drive away. Back to the Riverside Industrial Complex. Back to his rounds. Back to Building 7 where he would drive past and see nothing. Or pretend to see nothing. I looked into the Riverside Industrial Complex after that conversation. Tried to find information about Building 7. What it had been used for. Why it was abandoned. I found very little. The building had been constructed in 1973. Operated as a textile factory until 1988. Then it sat empty for 2 years before being purchased by a company called Meridian Industries. No record of what Meridian Industries did. No articles. No business filings. Nothing. The building was sold again in 1992. Sat empty ever since. 40 years of vacancy. But according to Marcus, not empty at all. Just occupied by something we can't see. Something working the eternal night shift in an office that exists outside normal space. I've driven past the Riverside Industrial Complex a few times since meeting Marcus. Always at night. Always slowing down as I pass Building 7. The windows are dark. The parking lot empty. Everything looks normal. But normal is a lie we tell ourselves. A comfortable story we use to keep the darkness at bay. Somewhere in that building there's a door that appears and disappears. A hallway that shouldn't exist. And an office full of figures that might once have been human. Still working. Still following their routines. Forever trapped in the night shift that never ends. If you work nights, I want you to pay attention to your surroundings. Notice the doors you pass every day. Notice if a new one appears. Notice if you hear footsteps in empty buildings. And if you ever find yourself in front of a door that's warm to the touch. A door that hums. A door that shouldn't be there. Don't open it. Some spaces are better left unexplored. Some shifts are better left unworked, and some offices should remain forever closed. Story 3. The Memory House. What if your memories weren't just in your head but lived in the walls around you? I was contacted by a woman named Elizabeth about 6 months ago. She was in her 60s, retired teacher, widowed for 3 years. She'd recently moved into a new apartment after selling the house where she'd raised her family. She was having trouble adjusting, she said. But it wasn't homesickness. It was something else. Something she couldn't quite explain. We met at her apartment. A small one-bedroom in a newer building. Clean, modern, completely ordinary. She made tea and we sat in her living room. I don't know how to start this, she said. I sound crazy every time I try to explain it. I told her to just tell me what happened, in her own words, without worrying how it sounded. So she did. After Tom died, my daughter thought I should sell the house she began. Too many memories, she said. Too much space for one person. And she was probably right. That house was 4 bedrooms. Big yard. Way too much for me to maintain alone. So I sold it. Found this place. It's close to my daughter. Close to my grandkids. Perfect for this stage of my life. I moved in 3 months ago. Brought my furniture. My books. My photographs. Tried to make it feel like home. But from the first night something felt wrong. I'd be sitting here reading and suddenly smell Tom's cologne. Old Spice. He wore it every day for 30 years. The scent would just appear. Strong. Like he'd just walked through the room. But of course he hadn't. Tom has been gone for 3 years. At first I thought maybe I'd sprayed some on something by accident. Maybe it was lingering on an old jacket or pillow. So I washed everything. Deep cleaned the entire apartment. The smell went away. For one day. Then it came back. And it wasn't just the cologne anymore. I'd hear his voice. Faint. Like he was in another room calling my name. Liz, he'd say. That's what he always called me. Liz. I'd get up to look and of course no one would be there. My daughter thought I was having trouble with grief. Suggested I see a therapist. So I did. The therapist said what I was experiencing was normal. That our brains can create sensory memories when we're processing loss. She gave me some coping strategies. Breathing exercises. Mindfulness techniques. They didn't help. Because it wasn't just Tom. I started experiencing other memories. Ones that weren't mine. Elizabeth paused. Took a sip of her tea. Her hands were steady but I could see the tension in her shoulders. One morning I woke up and walked into the kitchen, she continued. I was planning to make coffee. But when I got there I knew where everything was already. The coffee was in the cabinet to the left of the sink. The filters were in the drawer below. The mugs were on the second shelf above the counter. Except I'd never put them there. I'd organized my kitchen differently. Coffee on the right. Filters in a different drawer. Mugs on the bottom shelf because I'm short and can't reach the top ones easily. But when I opened the cabinets everything was where I thought it would be. Where I shouldn't have known it would be. I reorganized everything. Put things where I wanted them. Went to bed that night feeling unsettled but telling myself I'd just confused this kitchen with my old one. Memory playing tricks. The next morning I walked into the kitchen and knew where everything was again. Except it was different from the day before. Coffee in the cabinet above the stove. Filters in a drawer by the dishwasher. Mugs on a shelf I don't have. I opened the cabinets. Everything was where I'd put it the day before. But the knowledge in my head didn't match. The kitchen I remembered wasn't the kitchen I had. This continued. Every day I'd wake up with memories of a different kitchen layout. Sometimes things were in places I'd never used. Sometimes I'd remember items I didn't own. A red coffee maker. A set of blue ceramic mugs. A wooden cutting board with a fruit pattern carved into it. None of these things were in my apartment. It spread to other rooms. I'd walk into the bathroom and remember where the towels should be. Except they'd be in a different spot than where I kept them. And the location I remembered would change. Daily. Hourly sometimes. The living room was worse. I'd sit down to watch television and suddenly the room would feel wrong. The furniture wasn't where it should be. The television was on the wrong wall. The bookshelf should be by the window, not next to the door. But nothing had moved. Everything was exactly where I'd placed it 3 months ago. I was remembering dozens of different apartments, different layouts, different furniture arrangements, and none of them were mine. Elizabeth stood up and walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot below. I started writing them down, she said. The different layouts, the different items, trying to make sense of it. I have 17 notebooks now, hundreds of pages, descriptions of kitchens that aren't mine, living rooms I've never had, bedrooms that exist only in these memories. She turned back to me. Last week I found out who lived here before me. She walked to a drawer and pulled out a piece of paper, handed it to me. It was a printout from an obituary website. The photograph showed an elderly woman, white hair, kind eyes. Margaret Chen, the headline read. Beloved teacher and community member. Passed away in her home at age 89 after a brief illness. The date of death was 4 months before Elizabeth moved in. I talked to the building manager, Elizabeth said. Asked about Margaret. He said she'd lived here for 25 years. Since the building was new. He said she was a wonderful woman. Quiet. Friendly. She taught art at the local high school before retiring. He also said she had dementia in her final years. That she'd get confused. Mix up the present and the past. Sometimes she'd talk about her apartment like it was her childhood home in San Francisco. Sometimes like it was her first apartment in Portland. Sometimes like it was the house she'd shared with her husband before he died. He said near the end she didn't know where she was anymore. She was living in all her homes at once. All her memories overlapping until she couldn't tell which was real. Elizabeth sat back down. I think I'm living in her memories, she said quietly. I think somehow they soaked into these walls, into this space. And now they're bleeding into me. I'm experiencing all the different places she thought she was. All the different versions of this apartment that existed in her mind. I didn't know what to say. It sounded impossible. But the fear in Elizabeth's eyes was real. The notebooks she'd filled were real. Something was happening to her. Have you thought about moving? I asked. Every day, she said. But where would I go? What if it follows me? What if I've absorbed her memories and now I'll carry them wherever I go? We sat in silence for a long moment. There's more, Elizabeth said finally. Worse things. I don't just remember different apartment layouts anymore. I remember things that happened in those spaces. Arguments, celebrations, quiet mornings, lonely nights. I remember a man making breakfast in the kitchen. He has a kind face, gentle hands. I know he's Margaret's husband, though I've never seen a picture of him. I can feel how much she loved him, how much it hurt when he died. I remember a classroom full of students, watching them paint, feeling proud of their work, knowing their names even though I never taught those kids, never met them. I remember being afraid, confused, not knowing which home I'm in, looking for people who aren't there anymore, feeling like I'm disappearing. A tear rolled down Elizabeth's cheek. I'm forgetting my own memories, she whispered. Yesterday I couldn't remember the name of my daughter's first dog. I've had hundreds of photos of that dog. We loved him. But when I tried to remember his name, all I could think of was a cat named Whiskers. Margaret's cat. Not mine. Hers. I'm losing myself to someone else's past. And I don't know how to stop it. I wish I could tell you that I helped Elizabeth, that I found some explanation or solution. But I didn't. I suggested she see a neurologist. Make sure nothing medical was happening. She promised she would. I followed up with her a few times since that meeting. She's still in the apartment. Says she can't afford to move and her daughter thinks she's being dramatic. The memories continue. Some days she knows which ones are hers and which are Margaret's. Other days everything blends together. Last week she told me she remembers teaching me art in high school. Remembers me sitting in the back row, struggling with perspective. She spoke about it like it really happened, like she was really there. But Elizabeth was a math teacher, not art. And she taught at a different school, in a different city. We've never met before she contacted me about this story. She's disappearing into Margaret's life, bit by bit, memory by memory. I've thought about this a lot since meeting Elizabeth, about the nature of memory, of identity. We think of ourselves as solid things, continuous, but maybe we're more like buildings, accumulations of everything that happened in our space, every thought, every feeling, every moment. And maybe sometimes those accumulations don't dissipate when we die. Maybe they linger, seep into walls and floors and air, wait for the next person to move in, the next consciousness to absorb them. The apartment complex where Elizabeth lives is only 30 years old, but I wonder how many lives have been lived in those walls. How many memories are stacked on top of each other, waiting to bleed through. If you've ever moved into a new place and felt like you knew it already, like you'd been there before, maybe you had. Not in this life, but in the life of someone who came before. Someone whose memories are still soaking into the structure, still echoing in empty rooms. Pay attention to what you remember. Question whose memories you're experiencing. And if you start remembering things that never happened to you, places you've never been, people you've never met, maybe you're not remembering. Maybe you're being remembered. And somewhere in the walls around you, someone else's life is writing itself over your own. Story 4. The Junction. 4 roads meet in the woods outside of Ashland, Kentucky, and people say if you wait there long enough you'll see someone you know who's already dead. This story came to me through a friend of a friend. A woman named Amy who grew up in eastern Kentucky. She's in her 40s now. Lives in Cincinnati. Works in marketing. Has 2 kids and a normal suburban life. But she grew up in the hills where the old stories still circulate. Where people remember things the rest of the world has forgotten. She told me this story over the phone late one night. Said she'd never shared it with anyone outside her family. Said she wasn't sure she believed it herself. But it happened. She was sure of that. My Uncle Ray died when I was 16, Amy began. Heart attack. He was only 52. Too young. It hit our family hard. He was the kind of person who held everyone together. Big personality. Always laughing. Always helping someone with something. The family hasn't been the same since he passed. His funeral was on a Saturday. Small church in the hills. The kind of service where everyone knows everyone. Where people tell stories and cry and then go to someone's house for food and more stories. After the burial, my cousin Daniel pulled me aside. Ray's son. He was 19 then. 2 years older than me. He said he wanted to go to the junction. Asked if I'd come with him. I knew what he meant. Everyone in that area knows about the junction. It's this place where 4 dirt roads meet in the woods. No houses nearby. No reason for anyone to go there except for one thing. The locals say if you wait at the junction at midnight you'll see the dead. Not ghosts exactly. More like echoes. People who've passed recently. Driving through on their way to wherever the dead go. You can see them but you can't interact with them. They don't stop. They just pass through. I'd never been to the junction. Never believed in it. Thought it was just another local legend. But Daniel wanted to go. Wanted to see his father one more time. And I couldn't say no to him. Not that day. Not with the grief so raw in his eyes. So that night after everyone had gone home or passed out from exhaustion, we took Daniel's truck and drove out into the woods. The roads got narrower. Less maintained. Trees pressing in on both sides. No street lights. No houses. Just darkness and the sound of insects and the crunch of gravel under tires. We reached the junction around 11:30. Got out of the truck. Daniel brought a blanket and we sat on the hood. Waiting. The night was warm. Clear sky. Full moon. I could see the 4 roads stretching away into the trees. Empty. Still. Daniel didn't talk much. Just stared down the eastern road. That was the road his father would have taken to get to the church. If the stories were true. If any of this was real. I don't know what I expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe to sit there for an hour and then go home and pretend we'd done something meaningful. But midnight came and everything changed. The air got cold. Not gradually, all at once. Like someone had opened a freezer. I could see my breath. Daniel noticed it too. He sat up straighter, alert. Then we heard it. An engine. Distant. Getting closer. Coming from the south road. The one that led deeper into the hills. Away from town. Headlights appeared through the trees. An old truck. Late 70s Ford. Faded blue. Driving slowly. Almost drifting. It rolled into the junction. Stopped. Just sat there idling at the center where the four roads met. I could see the driver. An old man. Flannel shirt. John Deere cap. He looked around like he was trying to decide which road to take. Then he pulled forward. Headed down the eastern road. The one toward town. His taillights disappeared into the trees. That was Mr. Patterson, Daniel whispered. He died last month. Lived up in the hollow. Everyone knew him. I nodded. I didn't know Mr. Patterson, but something about seeing that truck. About the way it moved. It felt wrong. Felt like watching something that shouldn't be visible. We waited. 2 more vehicles came through over the next 30 minutes. A sedan I didn't recognize. A motorcycle that made no sound despite clearly being there. Both paused at the junction. Both took the eastern road. Then at 12:45 we saw it. The vehicle Daniel had been waiting for. A white pickup. Newer model. Clean. It came from the north road. The one from town. Headed toward the junction. Daniel stood up. That's him, he said. That's my dad's truck. The truck rolled into the junction and stopped. I could see the driver clearly in the moonlight. It was Ray. No question. Same face. Same posture. Same way of resting his hand on the steering wheel. But something was different. He looked peaceful. More peaceful than I'd ever seen him. Like a weight had been lifted. He looked at the four roads. Seemed to be considering his options. Then he looked directly at us. I stopped breathing. The stories said the dead couldn't see you. Couldn't interact with you. But Ray was looking right at us. Right at his son. And he smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It was the smile I remembered from birthday parties and family dinners. Warm. Full. The kind of smile that made you feel safe. Daniel raised his hand. A small wave. Ray nodded. Then he put his truck in gear and drove down the eastern road. Toward whatever comes next. His taillights faded into the trees and he was gone. Daniel and I didn't talk on the drive home. What was there to say? We'd seen something impossible. Something that defied explanation. But we'd both seen it. Both knew it was real. Amy paused. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I've never been back to the junction, she said. Daniel has. He goes every year on the anniversary of Ray's death. Says he's never seen his father again, but he's seen others. Neighbors. Friends. People passing through on their way to whatever lies beyond. The locals don't talk about the junction much. It's understood. Everyone knows it's there. Everyone knows what it is. But you don't advertise it. You don't make it a tourist attraction. It's sacred in a way. A thin place where the living and dead can glimpse each other for just a moment. I asked Amy if she thought what she saw was real. If it was truly Ray or just a grief-induced hallucination. Some shared delusion between her and Daniel. She was quiet for a long time. I saw him, she said finally. Saw him clearly. And I've never believed in ghosts or spirits or any of that. I'm a logical person. But logic doesn't explain what I witnessed that night. So I choose to believe it was real. That somewhere out there in those Kentucky hills there's a place where the boundary is thinner. Where the recently dead pass through on their way to wherever they're going. And for just a moment, if you're watching, you can see them one more time. I've thought about the junction a lot since that conversation. About the nature of death and grief. About how desperately we want to see our loved ones again. Just one more time. Just to know they're okay. Maybe the junction is real. A genuine thin place in the fabric of reality. Or maybe it's something we create with the force of our longing. A shared hallucination born from collective grief. Does it matter which? Daniel still goes there every year. Still watches the roads. Still hopes to see his father again. Even if just for a moment. Even if just to get one more smile. One more nod. One more confirmation that everything is okay on the other side. There are supposed to be other junctions. Other thin places scattered around the country. Crossroads where you can glimpse the procession of the dead. The locals always know about them. They're kept quiet, protected, hidden from those who would exploit them. If you ever find yourself near Ashland, Kentucky, if you're grieving someone you've lost, if you need one more moment with them, ask around. Find the old-timers, the ones who know the stories. They might tell you how to get to the junction. Go at midnight. Sit quietly. Wait. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see them, driving through on their way to peace. Looking better than they did in their final days. Free from pain. Free from fear. They won't stop. Won't speak to you. But they might smile. Might nod. Might give you that one small gesture that says everything you need to hear. I'm okay. I'm at peace. And I'll see you again when it's your turn to drive through the junction. Until then, keep living. Keep loving. Keep remembering. The dead don't leave us. They just take a different road. And sometimes, if we're lucky and we're watching, we can see them drive away into the peaceful dark. Safe journey, clear roads, and all the light they need to find their way home. Story 5. What lives in Lake Monroe? There are over 3 million lakes in the United States, but only some of them have something living in the deep water that shouldn't exist. This account comes from a man I'll call Jake. He asked me not to use his real name. Not because he's embarrassed, but because what happened to him caused problems he's still dealing with. Legal problems. Insurance problems. The kind that follow you when something unexplainable occurs and you try to report it. Jake was a recreational diver. He'd been diving for about 8 years when this happened. Started in the ocean. Worked his way up to more advanced certifications. Cave diving. Wreck diving. Deep water. He was experienced. Careful. Not the kind of person who panics or makes up stories. He contacted me because he said he needed to tell someone. Needed a record of what he saw in case something happens to him. In case he's not believed when the time comes. His words, not mine. We met at a coffee shop in Bloomington, Indiana. He looked tired. Older than his 36 years. He kept looking over his shoulder. Checking the door. When he started talking, his voice was low. Urgent. I dive Lake Monroe pretty regularly, he said. It's a reservoir. Artificial lake created in the 60s. About 10,000 acres. Popular spot for boating. Fishing. Some diving, though not as much as you'd think. The water is murky. Visibility maybe 10 feet on a good day. Lots of silt. Lots of submerged trees and debris from when they flooded the valley. I'd done maybe 30 dives there before this happened. Knew the lake pretty well. Had my favorite spots. Places where the old roads are still visible underwater. Places where you can find the foundations of buildings that were abandoned before the flood. Last summer I was diving near the old bridge. There's this collapsed bridge structure about 60 feet down. It's a cool sight. Good place to see fish. Sometimes you find old bottles or tools. Artifacts from the town that used to be there. I went down with my usual diving partner, guy named Chris. We'd been diving together for years. Trusted each other completely. We descended along the old road. Followed it to the bridge. Everything normal. We were exploring the bridge structure when I noticed something. A current. Strong. Coming from deeper water. That wasn't normal. Lake Monroe isn't deep enough or open enough to have strong currents. Maybe some movement from boats on the surface, but not what I was feeling. I signaled to Chris. Pointed toward the current. He felt it too. We decided to follow it. See where it was coming from. Maybe there was an underwater spring or something. Could be interesting. We swam deeper. Past the bridge. into an area I'd never explored before. The lake bottom dropped away sharply. The slope was steep, covered in silt and debris. Visibility got worse. Maybe 5 feet. I kept close to Chris, followed his light. At 90 feet we found it. An opening in the lake bed. A cave entrance, big enough to swim through. The current was coming from inside, pulling water into the cave. That didn't make sense. Currents flow out of caves, not into them. But I was feeling what I was feeling. Water being pulled into that opening like a drain. Chris and I looked at each other. We weren't cave certified for diving. We had the training but not the equipment. No guideline. No redundant air supply. Going into that cave would be stupid. Dangerous. But we were curious. And the opening was right there. And we could just look inside. Just peek in. Not go deep. Jake stopped talking. Took a drink of his coffee. His hands were shaking slightly. We should have surfaced, he said. Should have marked the location and come back with proper equipment. But we didn't. We swam into the cave. It opened up quickly. The entrance was maybe 6 feet across, but within 20 feet it widened into a cavern. Big. My light couldn't reach the far walls. The current was stronger inside, still pulling us deeper. We had to swim against it to stay in place. The cavern walls were smooth. Too smooth. Not natural rock formations. It looked almost carved. Deliberate. And there were markings. Symbols. Carved into the walls. I couldn't make out what they were in the low visibility, but they were definitely there. Deliberate. Patterned. Chris was ahead of me, shining his light around, trying to get a sense of the space. Then his light caught something. Something big. Moving in the darkness ahead. At first I thought it was another diver, but the shape was wrong. Too large. Maybe 8 feet long. Cylindrical. Pale. Moving with an undulating motion. Like a serpent. Or an eel. But Lake Monroe doesn't have anything that big. The biggest fish in the lake are catfish. Maybe 4 feet maximum. This thing was twice that size. Chris backed up. Bumped into me. I could feel his panic through the water. We both started swimming toward the entrance. Toward safety. But the current was against us. Strong. Like something was pulling water into the cave. Pulling us deeper. I looked back. The thing was following us. Getting closer. I could see it better now. It had a head. Smooth. Featureless except for what looked like a mouth. No eyes that I could see. No fins. Just this long pale body moving toward us with purpose. We kicked harder. Made it to the entrance. Squeezed through. Back into the open lake. I looked behind me. The thing was at the entrance. Watching us. I could see its mouth. Not teeth. Just a circular opening. Lined with smaller openings. Like it was designed to suck things in. We ascended fast. Too fast. I knew we should do safety stops, but we didn't care. We wanted out of the water. Away from that thing. We surfaced. Swam to the boat. Pulled ourselves in. Sat there gasping. Chris was white. Pale. He threw up over the side. What the hell was that he said when he could talk? I didn't know. Still don't know. We reported it. Called the Department of Natural Resources. Told them we'd found an unusual cave. Seen something large inside. They were skeptical. Asked if we'd been diving below our certification. If we'd been drinking. We said no. They said they'd look into it. They never did. I went back a week later. Solo dive. Against all safety protocols, but I needed to know. Needed to see that cave again. Confirm it was real. I couldn't find it. I followed the same route. Same depth. Same location. The lake bottom was there. Solid. No cave. No opening. Nothing. I thought maybe I'd misremembered the location. So I searched the entire area. Spent 3 hours underwater. Found nothing. The cave was gone. Jake leaned forward. his eyes intense. "I know what I saw," he said. "Chris knows what we saw. That cave was real. That thing was real. But it's like it closed up. Like it was never there. And now no one believes us. Our insurance company investigated the dive. Said we'd violated safety protocols. Revoked our coverage. Chris won't dive with me anymore. Says I'm crazy. Says we experienced nitrogen narcosis. That we hallucinated the whole thing. But we were at 90 feet. Not deep enough for narcosis. And we both saw the same thing. Both felt the current. Both swam through that cave entrance. Something is in Lake Monroe. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that can appear and disappear. Something that lives in spaces that aren't always there. And I think it's been there since before the lake was created. Since before they flooded the valley. I think when they created the reservoir they trapped something. Covered it with water. And now it's down there. Waiting. I've done research. Talked to old-timers who lived in the area before the flood. Asked about stories. Legends. Most wouldn't talk to me. But one old woman said something that stuck with me. She said there was a cave system in the valley. A deep one. Goes down maybe 1,000 feet. Locals avoided it. Said things lived down there. Things that came up sometimes. Things that took livestock. Occasionally took people. She said when they announced they were flooding the valley, everyone was relieved. Thought it would seal those caves forever. Bury whatever lived down there. But water finds its way into caves. And maybe whatever was down there found its way up. Found its way into the lake. Jake stood up. Our conversation was over. I still dive, he said. But never in Lake Monroe. I stay in pools now. Quarries. Places where I can see the bottom. Places where I know exactly what's below me. Because once you've seen something like that, once you felt that current pulling you toward a mouth that shouldn't exist, you never feel safe in deep water again. I've looked into Lake Monroe since that conversation. Tried to find other reports of unusual sightings. Strange encounters. I've found a few things. Fishing reports of unusually large disturbances. Boaters describing whirlpools that appear and disappear. A few drownings that were never fully explained. Nothing concrete. Nothing provable. Just fragments. Hints. Suggestions that maybe Jake isn't crazy. Maybe something does live in that artificial lake. Something that was there first. Something that considers the lake its territory now. If you ever find yourself at Lake Monroe, if you're thinking about diving those murky waters, ask yourself if you really want to know what's down there. Ask yourself if you're prepared to see something that science doesn't acknowledge. That shouldn't exist, but does. Most lakes are just lakes. Water and fish and rocks and silt. But some lakes, some bodies of water, they are different. They're homes to things that predate our understanding. That exist in the spaces between what we know and what we fear. Lake Monroe might be one of those places. And if Jake is right, if that cave is still down there somewhere, still opening and closing according to rules we don't understand, then something is living in those depths. Something pale and hungry. Something with a mouth designed to pull things in. Waiting for the next curious diver. The next person who ignores the warnings and swims too deep. Don't be that person. Stay shallow. Stay safe. And if you feel a current that doesn't make sense, if you see an opening that shouldn't be there, swim away. Swim fast. And don't look back. Because some mysteries are better left unexplored. Some caves should remain sealed. And some things living in deep water should never be disturbed. Story 6. The Lighthouse Keeper. The last lighthouse keeper in America disappeared in 2009 and nobody knows what happened to him except me. This is the most disturbing story I've collected. The most recent. And the one I've hesitated to share because parts of it involve ongoing investigations. Missing persons cases. Federal property. But the man who told me this story is dead now. And I think he'd want people to know what happened. What he saw. What he left behind. I met Thomas Byrne in a hospice facility in Portland, Maine. He was dying of cancer. Stage 4. Had maybe 2 weeks left when we spoke. He'd seen my website. Read my other stories. He called me. Said he had something to tell me. Something that had been eating at him for 15 years. Something he needed to get off his chest before he died. I drove up to see him. Brought my recorder. Sat by his bed. And he told me everything. "My name is Thomas Byrne," he began. His voice was weak. Raspy. But clear. Determined. "I'm 78 years old. I spent 40 years working for the Coast Guard. Most of that time on lighthouse duty. I've been stationed at 12 different lighthouses up and down the East Coast. I know these structures. Know their rhythms. Know their sounds. Know what's normal and what isn't. In 2009 I was assigned to Boston Light. That's the last continuously staffed lighthouse in America. All the others had been automated by then, but Boston Light was kept manned for historical purposes. A living museum. The last keeper was a guy named Sally. James Sally. He'd been there for years. Was due to retire. I was supposed to be his replacement. I arrived in August. Spent 2 weeks overlapping with Sally. Learning the routines. The maintenance schedule. The tour groups that came through. The paperwork. Everything. Sally was a good keeper. Meticulous. Professional. But he seemed tired. Worn down. More than you'd expect from someone about to retire and enjoy his pension. There was something else. Something he wasn't saying. One night near the end of our overlap we were sitting in the keeper's quarters. Having coffee. Watching the light rotate. And I asked him directly. Asked if something was wrong. He looked at me for a long time. Then he asked if I believed in curses. I said I didn't know. Hadn't thought much about it. He said every lighthouse keeper he'd talked to, every old-timer who'd spent real time in these structures, they all knew, all understood. Lighthouses aren't just buildings. They are thresholds. Barriers between the land and the sea. Between what we know and what lives in the deep. And sometimes things from the other side try to cross over. I thought he was messing with me. Old keeper trying to spook the new guy. So I laughed. Asked him if he was trying to scare me off. He didn't laugh. He said I'd understand soon enough. Said there were things I'd see. Things I'd hear. And I had to promise never to turn off the light. No matter what. The light had to keep rotating. Had to keep warning. Had to keep marking that boundary. I promised. Thought I was humoring him. Didn't realize I was making a pact that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Sally retired the next day. Left the island. I never saw him again. Later I heard he'd moved to Arizona. As far from the ocean as he could get. Thomas paused. A nurse came in. Checked his vitals. Asked if he needed anything. He said no. She left. He continued. The first month was normal. Quiet. I did the maintenance. Ran the tours. Kept the log. The light rotated every night. Ships passed in the darkness. Everything as it should be. Then in October the dreams started. I'd dream I was in the ocean. Deep water. Dark. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the pressure. The cold. And I knew something was below me. Something massive. Something rising. I'd wake up gasping. Drenched in sweat. But that feeling would linger. That sense of something beneath me. Something waiting. The dreams got worse. More vivid. More frequent. I started dreading sleep. Started staying awake as long as I could. But eventually exhaustion would take me and the dreams would come. And every time the thing beneath me was closer. Rising faster. Getting near the surface. Then one night I heard it while awake. I was doing my midnight check. Walking the gallery around the light. Looking out at the ocean. And I heard singing. Faint. Coming from the water. A woman's voice. Beautiful. Sad. I looked down. The water around the lighthouse was black. Calm. I couldn't see anyone. But the singing continued. And it wasn't coming from a boat. It was coming from under the water. I went inside, locked the door, told myself I was tired, imagining things, but the singing didn't stop. It continued all night, soft, persistent, just barely audible over the wind and waves. By morning it was gone, but I knew I'd really heard it, knew it wasn't a dream. Something was out there, in the water, singing. It happened again the next night, and the next, always starting around midnight, always continuing until dawn, always the same sad melody, no words I could understand, just pure sound, beautiful and terrible at once. I stopped doing my midnight gallery walks, started staying inside, but I could still hear it, through the walls, through the windows, through the stone itself. After a week I couldn't take it anymore. I called my supervisor, asked if anyone else had reported hearing things at Boston Light. He said no, asked if I was okay, suggested I take a few days off, come ashore, get some rest. I said no. I'd promised Sally I'd keep the light going, couldn't leave it unmanned. That night the singing changed. It got louder, more insistent, and I could make out words, not English, something older, but I understood them anyway, the way you sometimes understand things in dreams. The singing was calling, asking, begging, telling me to turn off the light, just for one night, just for a few hours. Let the darkness come, let the threshold open. I didn't turn off the light. The next night there was pounding on the door, heavy, rhythmic, like someone trying to break in. But when I looked out the window no one was there, just darkness and water. The pounding continued, all night, shaking the door in its frame, testing the locks. I called my supervisor again, told him what was happening. He sent someone out, a maintenance guy. The guy checked everything, said the door was fine, locks were solid, no sign of damage. He stayed the night, said he didn't hear anything unusual, just wind and waves, normal lighthouse sounds, but I heard it, even with him there. The pounding, the singing, all of it. He left the next morning, told my supervisor I was having some kind of breakdown, suggested I be replaced, but the Coast Guard couldn't find a replacement on short notice, said I needed to stick it out until December. Then they'd rotate someone else in. I lasted 3 more weeks. The singing got worse. The pounding got worse. And then I started seeing it. The thing in the water. It would surface at night, just below the reach of the lighthouse beam. I could see its shape. Long, sinuous, pale skin that seemed to glow in the darkness. And a face. Human but wrong. Too large. Eyes too far apart. Mouth too wide. It would watch me, watch the lighthouse, waiting for the light to fail, waiting for the threshold to open. I kept the light on, did everything I could to keep it operating, maintained the equipment obsessively, eating. My health was failing. On November 17th I collapsed, woke up in the keeper's quarters, don't know how long I'd been out, ran to check the light. It was still rotating, still on, but barely. The bulb was dimming, dying. I changed the bulb, got the light back to full strength. But I knew I couldn't keep this up. Knew eventually I'd fail. The light would go out, and that thing would get what it wanted. That night I made a decision. Thomas stopped, looked at me with eyes that had seen something no one should see. I left, he said. Abandoned my post. Just walked off the island during the day when the tours were running. Caught a ride with one of the tour boats. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't file a report. Just left. The Coast Guard found the lighthouse empty that night. Light still operating. Everything in order. But no keeper. I was listed as a missing person. There was an investigation. Search and rescue. They never found me because I was in hiding. Changed my name. Moved around. Stayed as far from the coast as possible. I broke my promise. Left that light unguarded. and I've been haunted by guilt ever since. But I also know I'm alive because I left. If I'd stayed, I would have died, either from exhaustion or from that thing in the water. One way or another, it would have gotten me. Boston Light was automated after I disappeared. They said it was because they couldn't find a reliable keeper. But I know the real reason. They couldn't get anyone to stay. Everyone who tried reported the same things. Singing, pounding, something in the water. They all left. And eventually the Coast Guard gave up, automated the light, removed the last keeper position. But that thing is still there, still singing, still waiting. And someday that light will fail. Someday the threshold will open, and whatever lives in the deep water around Boston Light will cross over. Thomas died 2 days after I recorded his testimony. I attended his funeral. There were maybe 10 people there. No family, just a few friends. No one from the Coast Guard. He'd successfully hidden his identity for 15 years. Died as Thomas Byrne, not as James Sally, the last keeper who'd disappeared. Wait, I said. Sally. You're Sally. You're the keeper who disappeared. Thomas smiled weakly. Now you understand, he said. I gave you a fake name at first. Wanted to see if you'd figure it out. Wanted to see if you were paying attention. But yes, I'm James Sally, the last keeper of Boston Light. The man who abandoned his post and disappeared. And before you judge me, before you think I'm a coward, know this. I kept that light on as long as I could. Fought that thing every night for weeks. And if I'd stayed one more day, I'd be dead. Or worse. Maybe I'd be part of it now. Part of whatever lives in that water. I've spent 15 years carrying this guilt, this knowledge. And I'm telling you now because someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand that lighthouses aren't just navigational aids. They are barriers, seals, keeping things in the ocean where they belong. And if those lights fail, if those barriers come down, something will cross over. I asked him what he thought it was. The thing in the water. He said he didn't know. Some kind of creature from the deep. Some kind of ancient thing that had been trapped offshore for centuries by the light. By the constant vigil. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe every lighthouse attracts something like it. Maybe that's the real reason we build them. Not to warn ships, but to warn what lives in the ocean. To tell it to stay away. To mark the line it cannot cross. Or maybe he said it's something else. Something that doesn't have a name. Something that exists in the space between water and air. Between darkness and light. Between what we know and what we refuse to believe. Either way, it's still there. Still singing. Still waiting. And Boston Light is automated now. Unmanned. Just machines keeping the light rotating. No human presence to maintain the barrier. No keeper to stand watch. How long before those machines fail? Before the light goes dark for more than a few seconds? Before that thing realizes there's no one left to stop it? Thomas closed his eyes. I thought he might have fallen asleep, but then he spoke again. If you ever go to Boston Light, he whispered. If you ever take one of those tours, stand on the gallery at night. Listen to the water. You'll hear it. The singing. And you'll know I was telling the truth. You'll know there's something down there. Something old and patient and hungry. Something that's been waiting a very long time for the light to fail. Those were the last words he said to me. He died quietly in his sleep 2 nights later. The cancer finally claiming him. But I don't think it was the cancer he was most afraid of. I think he spent 15 years terrified that thing from Boston Light would find him. Would track him down somehow. Would drag him back to finish what it started. I haven't been to Boston Light. Haven't taken the tour. But I've read reports from tourists. TripAdvisor reviews. Blog posts. And buried among the normal comments about history and architecture and beautiful views, I find them. The odd reviews. The ones that mention strange sounds at night. Singing from the water. A feeling of being watched. Most people dismiss it. Say it's just atmosphere. Just the wind. Just imagination. But some people know better. Some people hear it clearly. And those people usually don't come back. The last lighthouse keeper in America disappeared in 2009. That's the official story. But the truth is he escaped. Ran from something that had been waiting in the dark water for someone to make a mistake. For someone to fail. For the light to go out. And now there's no one left to keep watch. No one to maintain the barrier. Just an automated light rotating endlessly through the night. Marking the threshold. Holding the line. Until it doesn't. Until something fails. Until that thing in the water finally gets what it wants. If you live near Boston. If you see the light from shore. Pay attention. Watch it. Make sure it keeps rotating. Because if it stops, if it goes dark, even for a moment, something will cross over. Something that's been waiting centuries for that exact moment. And once it crosses, there's no putting it back. No resealing that threshold. No stopping what comes next. The lighthouse keepers knew. The old ones. The ones who spent years in those towers. They understood their true purpose. Not just to warn ships, but to warn the things in the deep. To tell them this far and no farther. To hold that line between the known world and whatever lies beyond. But now they're gone. The keepers. The watchers. The guardians. And we've replaced them with machines. With automation. With the assumption that technology is enough. That we don't need human presence. Human vigilance. Human will. Maybe we're right. Maybe those lights will keep turning forever. Maybe the barriers will hold. Or maybe we've made a terrible mistake. Maybe we've abandoned our posts. Just like James Sally. Just like every keeper who finally understood what they were truly guarding against. Maybe we'll find out soon enough. When the singing gets louder. When the pounding on doors begins. When something pale and hungry rises from the deep water and finds the threshold unguarded. The light unmanned. The barrier failed. And maybe then we'll understand. Too late. Far too late. That some jobs can't be automated. Some positions can't be eliminated. Some barriers require a human soul to maintain them. To believe in them. To stand watch through the endless night and refuse to let the darkness win. The last lighthouse keeper disappeared 15 years ago. But his warning remains. His story survives. And somewhere off the coast of Massachusetts that light keeps turning. Keeps rotating. Keeps marking the threshold. For now. For tonight. For however long the machines hold. But listen carefully if you're near the water. Listen for the singing. And pray that light never fails. Pray the barrier holds. Pray that whatever James Sally was guarding against never gets its chance to cross over. Because if it does, we'll all learn what the old keepers knew. What they carried in silence for generations. What they protected us from without us ever knowing we needed protection. Some things belong in the deep. Some things must stay in the darkness. And some lights must never go out. Conclusion. 6 stories. 6 encounters with the unexplainable. 6 moments when the ordinary world cracked open and revealed something underneath. Something that shouldn't exist but does. Something that waits in basements and industrial buildings and apartment walls and wooded junctions and deep lakes and around unmanned lighthouses. These aren't ghost stories in the traditional sense. Ghosts imply something left behind. An echo of the past. But what we've explored tonight is different. These are things that exist right now. That occupy space alongside us. That press against the thin barriers we've constructed to keep reality manageable. To keep our world small and safe and understood. But reality is never small. It's vast. Incomprehensible. Full of spaces and entities and experiences that defy our categories. Our explanations. Our need to make sense of everything. The people who shared these stories with me. They're not special. They're not sensitive or gifted or cursed. They're ordinary people who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong moment. Who pushed on a door that should have stayed closed. Who listened when they should have ignored. Who looked when they should have turned away. And now they carry these experiences. These memories. These scars. They go through their daily lives. work their jobs, raise their families, act normal. But underneath they know. They've seen behind the curtain. They understand that the world is stranger and more dangerous and more beautiful than we pretend. I want to thank you for listening, for spending these hours with me in the darkness, for opening yourself to these stories, for allowing the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the world is exactly as strange as these accounts suggest. If you've had an experience like these, if something has happened to you that you can't explain, that you've been carrying in silence, know that you're not alone. Know that others have seen what you've seen, felt what you've felt, and survived to tell about it. You can reach me through my website. Send me your stories, your encounters, your moments of inexplicable terror and wonder. I'll listen. I'll believe you. And maybe I'll share your story with others who need to know they're not crazy. They're not alone. They're not the only ones who've glimpsed what lives in the spaces between. Until then, stay safe. Stay aware. Pay attention to the doors that appear where they shouldn't. The sounds that don't belong. The feelings that tell you something is wrong. Those instincts exist for a reason. Trust them. They might save your life. Turn on the lights before you go to sleep tonight. Check the locks on your doors. And remember that somewhere out there in the darkness, someone else is experiencing what you just heard. Someone else is walking into their own unexplainable moment. Their own encounter with the impossible. Maybe it will be you tomorrow. Maybe you'll be the one with the story. The one who needs to tell someone. The one who needs to be believed. If that happens, remember what you've heard tonight. Remember that others have survived. Others have come through their encounters changed but alive. Haunted but functional. Scarred but stronger. The darkness is vast. But so is human resilience. Our ability to face the unknown and keep going. To see the impossible and not break. To carry these stories and still find reasons to smile. To love. To hope. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And thank you for being brave enough to explore the shadows with me. Sleep well if you can. And if you can't, if something keeps you awake tonight, if you hear singing or footsteps or feel like you're being watched, remember you're not alone. We're all in the darkness together, all trying to find our way, all hoping the light keeps turning, the barriers keep holding, the doors stay closed. Until next time, stay curious, stay careful, and stay alive. The night is long, but dawn always comes, always has, always will, probably.